Welcome to Japanatron. 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 Japanatron.
Hello and welcome to Japanatron. My name's Dave Pavlina, and Japanatron is a podcast about Japan and life in Japan and Japanese culture. So let's get into it. Today's topic, I want to talk about the misunderstood things about Japan. Now, these are things I've heard, time and time again, maybe from people who have visited or, people who see videos or pictures of Japan, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? What is up with you guys in Japan? Okay, so let's get right into this. Number one on my list is what's up with the surgical masks? Okay, you often see pictures of Japanese people wearing surgical masks. It could be old men, young men, hot-looking girls, kids. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's donning the surgical masks. And when I think about this, I have flashbacks to growing up and seeing Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson visited Japan, and he was busting out the surgical mask too. Okay, and everyone thought that was kind of weird. What is up with the surgical mask? Okay, so there's a number of explanations for this. So one of them has to do with the hay fever season in Japan. Now, after World War II, little history, Japan was just completely, obliterated with all the bombings. And so to restore the natural beauty of Japan, they planted all these Japanese cedars, these sugis. And they did a great job of restoring the natural beauty of Japan, especially in the mountain areas and everything. Japan has so many mountains, and these cedars just took off in those areas. Anyways, these cedars put off massive amounts of pollen. I mean, it looks like smoke. It looks like a forest fire. These plumes of these, this hay fever, this pollen stuff just blowing off the trees. It looked, when I saw it on the news, it looked like it was a forest fire. It looked like the trees were actually on fire and the smoke was coming out, running down the mountains. But no, that's not true. It's actually the pollen. So the hay fever season in Japan is wicked because of these cedars. And so people bust out these masks. And there's even special ones made for hay fever season. I don't know if they're any different or whatever, but so during hay fever season, these people wear these masks. And also, there's all these other products for this stuff, too. They wear these special glasses that cover your eyes completely, like goggles. And it's gotten really ridiculous with the the kind of products that the capitalists are coming up with, to capitalize off this whole hay fever thing. Okay, so that's kind of explanation A behind it. However, you still see the masks outside of hay fever season, okay? And the explanation for that is also, okay, maybe you're sick, maybe you don't want to get sick. And Japanese people, they're all about, collectivist group harmony and those kind of things, and, manners and politeness. And they kind of take the cover your mouth when you sneeze thing to a whole new level. Okay, and the idea here is that Japan is an extremely densely populated country. There's something like 137 million people on this chain of islands that's smaller than the state of California. Okay, so you need something more in such a densely populated country than just covering your mouth and, rubbing your snot on your sleeve or something. You need something more. And the culture sets that up. Okay, and this is going to be a theme I kind of reiterate throughout all of these things, is that oftentimes these things are just explained by culture. Okay, culture differs by country, so all of the people in that country have been programmed with slightly different, rules and, what's important and what's not important, and their mental programming is a little different. So that's just the way Japan is, And I hate to fall back on that explanation, but really it's probably the best and most universal one there is. But for this one, Japan's culture places a high importance on this kind of cleanliness and politeness and group harmony and all those kinds of things that reiterate throughout a collectivist culture. At a collectivist society. So surgical masks is one of those things. Okay, and they appreciate the function of the surgical mask over the fashion. We Westerners, me as an American, might think it's kind of silly, or it looks kind of strange to us because we just don't do that. So seeing, like Michael Jackson wearing this thing, it looks kind of strange. We don't really understand it. But in Japan, it's important. Okay, it's a densely populated country. They got this wicked hay fever season. They got wicked colds that can be, they could be easily contracted when some asshole on a train, decides to just, sneeze over everybody. So this kind of thing is important. Okay, so the last little piece of this I want to say is that surgical masks, given their kind of cultural kind of placement in society, that they are totally acceptable to be worn out in public, they actually fulfill kind of this other function that has nothing to do with hay fever or diseases. And I've kind of noticed this, is that often I notice that women, actually I've had people tell me this, women, they don't want to wear makeup, or something, and there's a lot of pressure to do that in Japan. The women have to look perfect. There's the whole importance on presentation. So women, God, I just don't want to do this, or you look like shit, women, men, whatever. You wake up in the morning, you look kind of like ass. So you just pop on the surgical mask, dude. Cover it up, or you don't want to be recognized. Maybe you're going into a porn shop, pop on the surgical mask, or maybe you're going to knock off a liquor store or a convenience store, pop on the surgical mask. So it has this kind of ski mask, place in society, as well as, like the hat that covers your bad haircut or something. The mask. And it's beautiful. It's great. And I wish we had this in America. You're having not only a bad hair day, you're having a bad face day. You got a big ass zit. So put the surgical mask on, cover that shit up, So yeah, it's awesome. Another thing I've noticed that's similar to this is that celebrities do this. They don't want to be noticed out in public. So they'll put the surgical mask and sunglasses and a hat on. And oh my God, if you're super famous in Japan, you just need those things. I mean, a surgical mask and sunglasses and a hat, no one's going to recognize you. And I'm sure people like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt wish they could do this stuff like this. Because in America, if you're wearing a surgical mask, it's just weird. It's just weird. Because we just don't do that. In Japan, they do. So it's kind of cool. You could take advantage of that fact and, wear the surgical mask if you're super famous or you got a big zit or something. So yeah, it's kind of cool that it's culturally acceptable to wear it. So, they kind of take advantage of that fact. Okay, so that's surgical masks. Moving on. Groping on trains. Why does this happen? In Japan, they have a special car during rush hour, the women-only car, dedicated just for women, because this is such a problem. Women are getting groped. Okay, why does this happen? Okay, number of reasons I've heard over the years. Number one is because they get away with it. It's a crowded train, and women, for one reason or another, they don't want to make a scene. It's a crowded train, and it's so packed with people, they don't even know who's doing it. So the woman, during rush hour, you make a scene, you're going to delay the train, and you're going to cause everyone a big, headache. So some women just tolerate it. And I think that's a horrible reason, but I think that is a legitimate reason. It's actually legitimate, meaning that's why it happens. Another one is women, it's so crowded, they don't know who's doing it. Okay? So it's hard to tell even if it's actually happening. The train might be so crowded, you might be misinterpreting a groping, a grab ass for someone, a dude just kind of adjusting his hands in his pockets, So chances are it's actually happening, but I don't know, maybe someone's just telling themselves, I don't know, maybe it's not happening. And there's this little sparkle of doubt so that you don't make the scene, you don't scream, because really, what's your option? It's a crowded train during rush hour, and someone's grabbing your ass. I mean, I admit, as a guy, that would take, putting myself in that situation, it would take a lot to get up the courage and make a scene, and call someone out on that. So yeah, there's that. The other explanation I've heard from an old colleague of mine who's half Japanese, and I love half Japanese people because they're kind of like hybrids. They have like the best of both worlds, and they have like the native English and the native Japanese, and they wear this dual culture hat. They can kind of play both sides, both sides of the coin, and it's really cool. And they often really enlighten me with this really brilliant explanations of Japanese culture that I never really understood. And this one guy told me that it's a fantasy, and that really the idea is, if you pay a woman to have sex with you, to whatever, any kind of sex industry thing, lap dance or whatever, it's paid. And it kind of ruins the fantasy in a way. And there's this idea that on the train, it's one of these places where you might actually get away with this fantasy. It's a packed, crowded train, and it's so packed maybe that someone's not really paying attention or can pay attention to what's going on, down there with the hands. There's so many limbs and people breathing and packed together. This is one fantasy you may actually kind of get away with, And the real sparkle of this fantasy that this guy explained to me is that what if you get away with it? It's that kind of thrill of shoplifting. It's really, maybe it's not about the money or about exactly what you're stealing. Maybe you don't need this clothing or whatever you're stealing, but just kind of the thrill of it. Is getting out of the store with whatever you stuck, in your pocket or your shirt or whatever. And the same idea applies here, is you're on the train and that kind of thrill of getting away with, groping a total stranger's ass. Okay. So this always just fascinates me that this continues to happen, but it does, obviously, because I've seen signs on the train, in the stations. They have this kind of women's, shape like you'd see at a restroom with a hand kind of grabbing up the skirt, with a circle and the cross through it, no groping, and there's posters and whatnot, and the all woman train thing, and I don't know, I really feel bad about this, because it's like, what do you do? Like, if I were a woman and I got groped, it's like, do I go to like the train station attendant? Excuse me, sir, I was riding your train and someone put like it felt like a finger in my asshole. And I just would like to register a complaint about that, because I don't think it really reflects well on your train company. If I'm riding your train and there's like a finger in my asshole, so really, what do you do? And I think this must be what goes through the guy's head. Is it? Oh, come on! What can this woman do? I'm just gonna shove my finger in her ass. It's so crowded, she's not gonna know. That's probably what goes through these psycho people's heads, and this is why it happens. It's a densely populated country, and Japan's got this kind of fucked up fantasy thing going on. So if you've heard other explanations of the groping on the train thing, please, I'm all ears, because those were the ones I've heard. Okay, moving on. Number 3 is why lady not first? Why is lady not first here? Okay, now, the obvious explanation here is, well, this is Eastern culture, and ladies first is Western etiquette, right? And I've heard that the history behind this in Western etiquette is actually kind of fucked up. Is that the idea behind it was to send the lady in first to see if anyone gets killed. It was kind of the equivalent to, kings who had tasters, to taste the food before they ate it to see if there's any poison in it. If the taster dies, then don't eat the food, it's got poison in it. Same idea, lady first was send the lady in first around the corner or into that castle or the house or whatever, and if she screams and gets slaughtered and hacked to pieces with swords, then you know not to go in there. Okay, so the idea behind lady first and the whole etiquette thing is actually kind of fucked up. Okay, so I'll say that to begin with. Japan doesn't do it. Okay, so obviously they don't do it because it's not Western culture. This is Eastern culture. This is the East. This is Asia. They don't do that kind of stuff. Okay. Number two, also in especially cities like Tokyo, and I'd be interested to see studies if this also happens in a city like New York, because it is the West, and to see if ladies first actually still happens in a city like New York. Because my idea is that Tokyo is so dense, and I've said this before many times, you really can't do ladies first all that easily in a city like Tokyo. Because you're going to be standing there all day as the official door holder for all the ladies of Tokyo, okay? And you're going to look like a douchebag. There are some instances where you can kind of pull it off. You can kind of look behind you if there's someone behind you, but that's not really ladies first. That's just common courtesy, to prevent the door from slamming in someone's face, all of a sudden. So... the second part of my explanation will be just that, is that you really can't do ladies first all that well, okay? And, again, I'm going to fall back on the whole cultural thing. It's just not their culture to do ladies first, okay? It's traditionally a patriarchal society, very male-based, okay, with the, shoguns and the samurai and all that stuff. such an intelligent explanation there, Professor. Thank you. Okay, so that's my short one on Lady Not First. Okay, that's a pretty obvious one. Last one I want to talk about is what is up with the fucked up fashion. Why is the fashion here so wacky? Okay, and the best explanation I've heard for this is that in Japan, unlike other countries, trends never really die, okay? In a country like the US, trends will come and trends will go. Some trends will come back, actually. I remember there was some kind of bell-bottom jeans revival that kind of came back. And I don't know, in 20 years we might be dressed, like the 80s. Stuff can come back. We might be dressed like Don Johnson or, with the pink t-shirt and the jean jacket or something. But in Japan, these things actually never die. They just pile up on top of each other. So I've seen people dressed with leg warmers and military boots and camouflage, and a jean jacket, and a newsboy hat, all in one outfit, okay? So it's kind of the ultimate freedom, because really anything goes in Japan, okay? Because a trend that was from 30 years ago, you can still do it. You can still find it for sale, and you can still do it. You are totally welcome to do that. And I see it all the time. And so that's the most brilliant, most condensed explanation I've heard of this, is that just trends just never really die. They always just kind of pile up on top of each other. And it's really kind of cool because, you're never really afraid of throwing out anything. You never really have to. I'm in love. I'm in love with my 90s, Kurt Cobain, Seattle grunge flannels. And my family from back in the U.S., they're always making fun of me for keeping these things, for holding on to these things, and I'm just waiting for the day, and I thought the day came in the U.S. when these things came back in fashion, and you have to do stuff like that in the U.S. You have to not wear certain clothes or get rid of clothes because simply not because the clothes are old or you can't wear them anymore, they've fallen apart. No, it's because they're just out of fashion. But in Japan, you don't have to do that. It's the ultimate fashion freedom. You can wear whatever the fuck you want. You can wear a clown afro wig and the jean jacket with the pink t-shirt, and tight shorts and leather pants or whatever the fuck you want. They got this loose socks thing that was from 30 years ago, and it's still around, okay? I still see, remember those stockings? What do you call those? They came up to the girl's thigh. They were really hot, probably in 1992 when the movie Clueless came out. I think that's when that movie came out with Alicia Silverstone, and everyone was wearing those. I remember I was in high school, and all the girls were wearing those hot ass, stockings that came up to their thigh or something. High socks, I think is what they call them. And that was awesome. That was an awesome era in the US. And it died out, and I was so bummed. Well, in Japan, that never died out. They still wear those, okay? And I love it because they're awesome. And I don't understand why they died out, okay? They should never die out because they're awesome. They're an awesome fashion, okay? 1992 grunge flannel. It's an awesome fashion. It should never die out. And that's why I love you, Japan. Your fashions never, ever die. They just pile up on top of each other. And what Japan does, it's brilliant, is they just change the name. They take a fashion, that people might be hesitant to buy because it has the name associated with the 80s or something, and they will just change the name over again. I think something was called spats in the 80s, and they changed it to tights or high socks or something like that. So it's brilliant. I love you, Japan, for doing that. Because I never have to throw out any clothes. It's not old clothes. It's not out of fashion. It's not dead. It is vintage. It is a trend that is just piled up, up, and up. So I love you, Japan, for that. So that is my summary of explanations of 4 misunderstood things about Japan. I hope you enjoyed it. Last but not least, I'll do my little promo thing. If you like the show, please review, please follow me, blah, blah, blah. You could just go to Japanatron.com. I got all of my links for all of the follow things you can do up at the top, the YouTube, the Twitter, the Facebook, all that good stuff. An important one is iTunes. It would be really cool if you can rate and review. I'd love to get a star rating on that, enough ratings so that actually the rating average will show. That's my goal in life, is to get that. That would be so awesome. I hope you enjoyed this, and take care. You have a very good night, a very good day. Toodles!
Welcome to Japanatron. Japanatron, Japanatron. Japanatron.
You have received this transmission from the Comedy Podcast Network. For more shows, visit comedypodcastnetwork.com.